develop a bond, maybe, hopefully, after many years of being married. Often a husband is much older than a wife. And so love does not exist in much of the blood, in much of the countryside. Love, the way that we romanticize love as the cornerstone and foundation of a healthy relationship, that is not a thing, right? But then you come to Rabat, you go to Marrakesh, and you see the younger generation that has been exposed to technology, has been exposed to the internet, has been exposed to other cultures, is exposed to the expat life, to literature, to education, right? There you see a dating culture. We saw these cute little kids, they were like 16 years old holding hands the other day, and I was like, oh, look how cute that is, and Badr goes, that is not right in this culture. And it's interesting how differently you see it in the culture. I think that younger people, I know a lot of my friends in the city, maybe they see more love, maybe in a relationship.
Yeah, I would, just to add, I think Moroccan culture, when it comes to love, it's, so I want to explain the first thing is that there is the gender roles, you know, like there is certain roles expected from the wife and there are some certain roles expected from the man. So when you get together for a marriage, the roles already understood, you know, it's an unspoken role. So when they get married the second day, the woman is already putting her pressure cooker on the stove and the man is already outside making living, you know, and you don't have to talk about, you know, not right now, you know, it's on stage, you have to talk with your partner, things that you agree on, things that you don't agree, we see if you're compatible. They already have those roles already embedded in the culture, so when they meet, she knows what she's expecting from her and he knows what she expects from him. And so love is not in the picture, you know, as long as she looks good for him, so he accepts her, and as long as he can prove that he can work. That's pretty much it. So when they get married, and in the long run, as you said, they develop this bond, and you can see love in actions. You don't see it as a word. You don't say that I love you back, but in actions. If a woman got sick, he would probably do the impossible to save his wife, and she would do whatever it takes so she can take care of her husband. And you'll see that same kind of treatment with the kids and with the bigger family. So love, it's presented through actions, you know, not through words.
There's actually a really interesting Nivea commercial on last year, where they were having children. By children, I don't mean like young children. I mean children in their like 30s and older 20s tell their mom, "I love you," because even parents and kids, they don't tell each other I love you. That's not a ideal in this culture to say I love you. I don't think you've ever told your mom, oh, can break.
If I do, she's gonna ask if I'm alright and what's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. She'll be like, are you okay? What's happening? I probably talk to my father that I'm taking something. Yeah.
But you ask if we are in love, and I think it's really interesting having a cross-cultural relationship. Badr has worked for Peace Corps for 4 years. He's met many Americans. He's worked with many American volunteers in his community where they lived and served in Tiflit in his community, and he has been very westernized in many ways and become very familiar with our culture. And so I think that we blend the two ideas, where not only do we share a love, a very vocal love for one another. There's also the idea of, I was down on my deathbed with the flu this week, and Badr was very Moroccan man in his way of showing I love you by taking care of you and going to the pharmacy and getting you medication even though I don't know if it's going to work, and so yeah, I think it's a really interesting.
So to answer your question, if you ask that man if he loves his wife and he says no, but if you ask him, what would you do if she's about to die? And he would say that he would do whatever it takes, and that's, to me, for example, that's love. So it's not vocalized, but it grows with time. And
what are some of the adversities that you face being cross-culturally involved? Some of the difficult difficulties you might face?
We live together and everybody thinks we're married because if they knew that we were only just recently engaged as of last week, we would go to jail. He would go to jail. It's illegal to live together. Okay, so the law is not actually that it's illegal to live together. There was a couple of youths in Marrakesh, I think, a few months ago. It was a slum. Anyway, it doesn't matter. A city here in the country. There were a boy and a girl living together, strictly platonically. They just wanted to save on rent, right? The neighbor turned them into the police because he didn't like that they were living together unwed. And then when they went back and looked at the law, it's not that they were living together that was illegal, it's that they assume that when a boy and a girl are alone behind a closed door, they are getting it on. And that is illegal. It is illegal to have sex with somebody who is not your husband or wife. Well, that's flexible. But a woman cannot have sex with anybody but her husband, and a husband cannot have sex with anybody but his wife and the prostitutes that he goes to.
According to the law, only his wife.
And so we would get in trouble with the cultural police for premarital
Shacking up.
Yeah, exactly. The assumption that we are, whether we are or aren't, the assumption is there because a man and a woman obviously cannot keep their hands off each other.
So you can go to jail off of assumption. Is there no you go trial error and prove that that's not or is going on? So is it just like a one-way street? Like if someone basically told that you guys were living together, but it wasn't like that, there's no judge or court judicial system in place for that?
So normally there are laws, against that, and if they want to take the long road, I'm saying, they would take them to the jail and to the court and blah, and there's a trial. It takes a long time, but those kind of businesses only handled within the police department, So, for example, if a man or woman they've seen, dating or like in certain corners holding hands, in certain places, the police they can take them to the police department, and they have two choices. Either the man will go to the jail, and the woman she will be, her reputation will be all over the place, or they get married, and then they will be out of jail. So luckily, if they ask us this question, you can just sign the paper the following day and fine. But this only deals within the police department. They don't want to take it all the way to the court because it can take a long time, and there are more issues, complicated issues that the court might deal with rather than that.
Morocco's a very shame-based culture, and so even just arresting someone and pulling them into the public spotlight for this, that's a huge punishment for somebody that would happen to. They would be very shamed, and they would shame their family, and they would bring upon the wrath of Moroccan shame. And that is a big, that's a hefty punishment in this culture. And so I think that without going through the legal proceedings, just calling it out to light, just bringing the police into the situation and making it a public issue, that's a pretty big punishment.
And to answer your question, one of the difficulties, the first time I brought Elizabeth to my family's house, first I brought her as a friend, because if we're not married, then we're not dating. We're only friends. So I have to introduce her as friends. And then when my mom got to know her and she liked her, and they create a very a strong bond. My mom automatically thought that we were engaged. Since I'm bringing her home and she spent the night here and we are close to it, she automatically assumed that we were engaged, and that's the story that I told her. No, we're already engaged. So
yeah. When we got engaged last week, she's like, "Yeah, you're already engaged. What do you mean?
Yeah.
You got a ring? Where's Badr's necklace?"
So yes, dating culture is very shamed upon, and so I had to do that. So that's one of the things that I had to come across culturally. But the other way, she introduced me to her parents as her boyfriend. So.
Where are you from again?
Indianapolis. Yeah. She had her hands up actually a hot minute ago.
like we talked with our tour representatives, like saying that a male having a female friend and a female going out to like McDonald's and eating a burger with a male friend is something looked down upon or something, or it's not like it wouldn't be happening.
So,
Especially
yeah, so like I said, this idea that if there's a guy and a girl alone someplace, something fishy must be going on, right? And so a guy and a girl just hanging out and going to the local snack to have a sandwich, that wouldn't happen. That maybe in the city, because the city's more progressive, that wouldn't happen in the blood, because there would be the assumption that there was something going on. There's no way a guy and a girl could just be friends.
What do you mean by in the blood?
In the countryside. I'm sorry, I said that earlier, because there are some words in Arabic
But
that
they
just...
call it the blood.
The blood, the countryside.
Okay.
Yes. So if I put the Moroccan, guy go and I see a Moroccan couple eating a burger in McDonald's, I would go thinking that they're either dating or they're couple, and so there is a small chance they're just friends, because this is a culture where the friendship between men and women, it's not something taken like as a normal thing, and I'm sure if you ask a Moroccan girl, she would say the same thing, and if you ask a Moroccan man, they would say the same thing. If you ask her, if you go with a man to have a burger in McDonald's, what type of relationship do you have with him? She said, like, we're dating. Unless there are other friends around, then yes, then they're all purely friends.
McDonald's is another interesting aspect, because that's a socioeconomic status, and only upper middle class or above folks would be going to McDonald's. And so I think specifically going to McDonald's, it's potential that they're just going as friends, because that's a socioeconomic status. But there are only like 5 McDonald's in the country. So if they were going to a restaurant in their community, that would definitely not be acceptable. Girls are still seen as their virtue has to be protected, right? Because a woman only has relations with her husband. That's it. She is a protected flower until the day that she gets married. And so if she were to go to a restaurant with a boy, something could happen and her virtue would be honored. She would no longer, not honored, and she would no longer be a virgin, and then she couldn't get married.
Are there women that are protesting?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, across the country there. And I wanted to get there. I don't want this to all be negative. I do want to talk about the positive. There are lots of great things going on. There was a rally a couple months ago against sexual assaults. There was a terrible video released of a young girl with mental issues, and some boys sexually assaulted her on the bus. There were 5 or 6 of them, and they held her, and they videoed it like idiots do, and they lifted up her shirt and they were fondling her. They were trying to stick their hands in her pants. It was very disturbing. I wish I'd never seen it. However, in response, many of thousands of women went to Casablanca or to Rabat.
Both. Yeah.
And they protested. They protested sexual assault and violence against girls and women. And so since then, there's been this huge discourse going on online, in Facebook groups. Facebook is huge here, huge. And so there's a lot of dialogue going on in there. There are a lot of women's associations. They're called Nadi Neswis, where they're starting to do a lot more education about gender equality and women's rights. There's an amazing organization called MRA, which means woman, which stands for Mobilizing Rights Association, and there are a couple of lawyers who are educating women around the country about the Mudawana laws, about their rights as women. There's a lot of education. There's the what's the campaign we saw on the bus?
Don't touch me.
It's a hashtag campaign.
Yeah, don't touch me, which is like against sexual harassment.
And so there's all this publicity in all of the cities, on the buses and on taxis and on billboards, and so yeah, it's definitely becoming a much more vocal conversation. You had a question in the back?
It was answered in this whole discussion that unfolded.
Cool.
What about same-sex? That's just a no-go.
That is still very illegal, still very culturally unaccepted, still very dangerous.
There are a lot of layers that they have. This topic has to go, past through them before we can even talk about law, because there's the culture, there's religion, there's the culture, and there's the law. So, and all of them, they do not 100%, no other discussion, want to talk about, same-sex marriage. And if a couple, same-sex couple, have been seen publicly showing affection, they would go to jail. Yes, whether they are Moroccans or not Moroccans. If they make it before the public, beat them up.
Yeah, break into their house and beat them up, or trap them in the corner and beat them up. What's hard about Morocco is, when it comes to social development, is things are the way they are because they've always been that way and they will always be that way. That's just how Morocco is. That's how, we have couscous every Friday because we have couscous every Friday, and things are just, we scrub our way this way when we go to the hammam because that's the way that you do it at the hammam. Things are just done that way. So it's very hard to implement social change. It's very slow going. However, on the promising note, there is a large LGBTQ community in Marrakesh. I think mostly because there's a large expat community there. So it's a safe zone. Relatively safe. Things still happen there. It's still relatively safe there. You see more and more youths being more comfortable in their sexuality in places like Rabat and Casablanca, but it's still a very dangerous topic. There's a long way to go.
And the good thing, I don't know how you say it, but same-sex couple, they don't have a problem, dating or showing affection to each other as long as they do it in a private place, because they assume that the same-sex couple, they're not gonna be sexually active. They seem like, okay, if two guys go living in a house, then it's fine, it's not a big deal, which means that they are they're in Morocco and they are living their life the way they want to live it, but at the same time they're very crucial because there is no in between. They're either like you're safe or not.
Yeah.
There is no in between.
Yeah, I think the Arab culture in general, I think I can generalize this, is a very affectionate same-sex culture, right? You see men walk down the street like, buddy, you see men very and women also are very physical with one another in many ways.
So many hold hands as friends.
They like snuggle each other. I'm not kidding. So it could pass as heteronormative behavior until a certain point, and then once you pass that certain point, then it's very dangerous.
So you mentioned that sex before marriage is very much frowned upon.
Oh yeah.
Let's say a young woman or a woman becomes pregnant out of wedlock.
Yes, that's a mushkil, that's a problem. So first of all, if she got pregnant and her family, there's two scenarios. Either they're trying to contain problem and so nobody can hear about it until they have the baby silently and see what they can do, or try to get her to marry someone so they can contain the situation, or they will definitely kick her out of the house and she'll have to figure out things on her own, and mostly what will happen is either she will take her baby and live somewhere else with nobody know who she is, and she will make a story about him, like how his father in the army or dead, or she'll give him away, put him and then somewhere and leave him next to the mosque, and and then find babies all over the place. So yes, it's a shame thing.
Unfortunately, woman is seen as damaged goods. She's no longer a virgin. She's no longer desirable, and so it's very hard to marry a woman off after she's had a baby. Even a woman who's been married, widows don't really remarry. Men remarry. No problem. Women, however, they don't. So there was a young woman in my community down on his knees. She was 23, I think. And there's two ceremonies in a Moroccan wedding. There's the engagement ceremony, which is the signing of the papers, which is kind of a smaller ceremony with the family. And then there's the big wedding where you blare 12,000 speakers and everybody in town hears you, and everybody knows you're getting married, because it's basically a sign saying this woman is okay to have sex with her husband because she is no longer a girl. She's now a